Here we are, Lahaina. Did I say that right?
Yes, perfect.
And what is your nationality? I love your accent.
I'm originally from Brazil, but I've been living in Sydney for the past 17 years.
Are you picking up the Australian accent a little bit as well?
Y- Yes, when I speak with people from other countries, they can pick up the slangs or the way that we speak little things. Yeah.
So Portuguese, is that your native language?
Yeah. So my
Got it.
family's still in Brazil, and I
Hmm.
go and see them every couple of years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's just dive in to this whole. I teach a lot and talk a lot about feminine embodiment. I know you do as well. So let's just kind of start there. I think especially as we're in the midst of the holidays and the hustle and bustle and some complex feelings that can arise, the
Mm.
idea of bringing us back to our center, back in our bodies through these embodiment type of practices. But define that for us. How would you know, let's just say, if you were embodied, if a person was embodied?
Such a good question. So I think my journey started when I was doing a lot of personal development and realizing it was a lot about mindset. And as much as I love mindset, how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive the world and the correlation. And I felt something was missing because I'm like, we're not truly embodied. So, for example, saying affirmations is not enough if you're just repeating them and you're not feeling in your body and you're not bringing the emotions and you're not learning how to deal with your emotions. So, for me, the embodiment is encompassing all of who we are. So, the spirituality, the mindset, and definitely our body. So, I love feeling my gut feeling, feeling what my heart's telling me.
Even if
Um,
it's not pleasant, right?
Exactly. And a lot of the time is not, and is learning how to listen to those messages and move the energy in the body. So for me, for example, it could be dancing, it could be going for a walk outside, it could be even a shower. I was talking on a masterclass this week that even a quick shower can shift how
Mm.
we are operating in our body in that moment. So the water running through you, either hot or cold shower. So yeah, embodiment is how we are being a living, breathing experience of who we are, right? So what are you embodying right now? And it could be traits, it could be feelings, it could be sensations.
Mm.
And for me, I think we spoke a little bit about before starting the interview is being the authentic self, the vulnerable self.
Yes.
To feel that you're living in alignment.
Yeah, and I think talking too, maybe we start here with more the negative, then bring it up because there are certain things that pull us out of alignment. There are certain things that pull us out of our bodies that threaten the attachment we have to ourselves, to our own being. And I have some ideas from what I've observed, not only for me personally, but people I've worked with. What do you see that pulls us right out of alignment?
Fear of judgment. So we live in society, we're always surrounded by people, and we have the need of belonging and feeling loved and accepted and friendship and connection. So the moment we feel threatened, if I show up as I truly am,
Mm.
and that doesn't fit in with my environment. So I see a lot in the corporate world, right? So I used to work in corporate for a long time, and I'm like, I don't want to dress like this. It's not how I
Yeah.
would dress, in my
But you
normal
feel like
day.
you have to conform.
Exactly. So for me, what we're talking about is that those moments that you feel like you have to conform in your family, in your community, even with your friends. Sometimes you don't feel like you can be really, truly authentic because there is that fear of judgment and rejection.
Okay, yeah, fear of judgment. Mine was along the same lines because I think one of the most primal fears we have is being alone, that we're going to be abandoned and rejected because people are not going to take us at face value or love who we actually are. And
Mm.
you and I were talking before, and that's exactly what you're saying, fear of judgment, right? Because if you even climb underneath a fear of judgment, well, it's like, well, if they judge me, then what's going to happen? They're not going to like me. Then they're going to move away from me
Yeah.
energetically or reject me. And then what happens? Oh, well, then I'll be alone.
Mm.
And that piece is huge, especially as you and I were talking about leading in this holiday season where all the messaging we get is just like family togetherness and everyone's celebrating and everyone's happy. And yet
Yeah.
many, many people struggle with loneliness, even if
Mm.
they have people all around them during
That's
these
what
times.
was coming up to me. Sometimes you can be in a room full of people and still feel alone. right? So that's that feeling in the body. What am I doing that I'm still feeling alone, even surrounding with people? So when we bring that embodiment piece, it's like listening to your body and realizing that there is a missing piece. And it could be that I'm not being authentic, I'm not being vulnerable, I'm not saying no when I want to, I'm not saying yes when I want to. And when we talk about fear of judgment, for me, it's like it can be a bit of a subconscious thing that come up, right? We might not even be aware of that. So having that awareness is definitely the first step. And then choosing myself every step of the way is huge for me.
How do you choose yourself practically? Like, what does that look like?
Like I said, if I want to dress up like this, dressing
just
up.
Showing up, just doing what you feel called to do when you feel called to do it.
And it's an ongoing process, right, of discovering who I am, because I change, I grow, I evolve. So there is not set in stone, oh, this is how I like to dress forever. No, every day I wake up and I have different feelings and emotions and creativity. And so honoring those things that come up for me. Yeah.
I think, and I feel and know, not just think, that women oftentimes, we are really hard on other women. When you, at least this, I'm just being totally honest, it used to trigger me when I was in my old mindset and didn't understand embodiment and was in this whole like loop of what are people going to think, which I still have to regularly deprogram from. But I used to get triggered by women who just showed up with all of who they are, just totally could be authentic. And it's not like they were just alive. They just were vibrating with this essence of aliveness. And I felt like I didn't know how to access that. So when I saw another woman who could do that, I resented that, or I judged that. And I'm like, it's a whole different frame for me now, because now I can appreciate so many different ways that a woman or man can be embodied. And because I'm really landing in my own body for the first time, and I'm in my 50s, it took a long time. It's like other women who secretly want that level of authenticity, if they're judging you, you should take it as a compliment, because they're trying to access that and they're struggling because of their own fears.
Yeah. So one thing that helps me, since you're asking me for practical steps as well, is not taking anything personally, because I feel like
so
people
hard to do.
People are projecting exactly what you said. So if a woman is confronted by how I show up or how I dress or what I say, it's her stuff coming up, right? And so, like you said, it can trigger my survival mechanism and my body, and I have reactions, but then my brain is like, don't take it personally. I'm showing up as the full expression of who I am, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that's my invitation to people to, again, go back to what's authentic to you and honoring that. And then for the other women,
just to put a pause there, that's really huge, because you had to do a lot of work to reprogram your brain to set a new pattern, that when that came up, you were able to use your thoughts to say, it's not me, it's them, right? I'm going to be true to who I am. That's the work.
Yeah. That's why I love personal development. That's the
you
mindset.
Make it sound so easy.
That's the mindset piece that I was talking about in the beginning, right? So I did a bunch of courses about communication, about how you perceive the world, how you perceive yourself. And so that's the really important part of the mindset, is knowing how to activate those thoughts that are empowering to you, and not the ones of fear and rejection and, separation.
So would you say, just kind of to build that mindset, let's just say, and lay down those new neural patterns and those new thoughts and beliefs, what is your process for that? Are you just like observing your thoughts, and then when something comes in, you consciously catch it? Because I think we have so many unconscious thoughts that just invade all day long.
Yeah. So when we're talking about mindset, I would relate more to the rational mind and the thoughts that we perceive. So that's cool. And like I said, I coach myself all throughout the day. Right? So when I see that coming up, and like we were talking about courage and confidence, and I said, I have the same insecurities as most women. A lot of the time I look myself in the mirror, I'm like, oh, I put on weight, I don't look like a model, or, I'm not skinny enough. And then in that moment, I have to catch that thought and say, no, I'm
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm healthy. This is my body. I'm more curvaceous. I'm not skinny. I've never been and never will be. So is that constantly kind of coaching myself into what's going to support me throughout the day.
Mm. Do you find, I know it helps me, and I don't know, not everybody's super visual, but it helps me to lock in like a image or a vision. It's like when I don't have the wherewithal to string thoughts together that are conscious, sometimes an image, like for instance, I think of like a bright sun shining or a star or just something that just takes me out of that loop,
Beautiful.
can be super helpful.
Yeah, and I think everyone might be different with our senses, right? And what works for us. So when you ask me that, I was thinking, I don't visualize anything. Maybe it's more of a feeling, maybe that feeling of gratitude for my body, everything. My body is working really well right now. I'm not in hospital. I don't have any issues. So I'm like, I'm so grateful for my body and my health. So that shift,
Gratitude.
very fast.
Yeah. Gratitude is kind of like one of the highest frequency states, and it will break a pattern like no other, but it's hard to muster that up when you're so used to those old programs that just arise. It's like, oh, I don't want to be grateful. But cultivating that, I think, as a practice is what you're saying, right? Is just, if that's your default programming, gratitude, how powerful is that?
Yeah, it
That's
is.
beautiful.
The other day I was driving, I was just so happy because it's getting warmer here in Australia. And winter for me was really tough, like that really moody, like internal feeling. So I'm like, I feel so grateful that it's sunny and warm, and it was huge. And that made my day. So it was something, can feel little for some people, but for me, I was like, wow.
Yeah. And it's the little things too. And I'm a little jealous because we're heading into our coldest season while you guys are heading into, we're on opposite ends of the planet there. So let's talk a little bit about fostering confidence. Let's go back to loneliness first, though. It's tough. I mean, well, okay, it's paradoxical because sometimes you need to be on the path of loneliness or being alone so that you can learn how to come home to yourself. And also there's this, like, if you're a revolutionary or a leader or you're pioneering something, you have to stand alone. You have to have the wherewithal and the courage to just be willing to stand alone and step out of your tribe or step out of the groupthink or whatever. So with that in mind, um, let's just say somebody is really suffering right now. They're feeling very lonely. For maybe they've lost a loved one, maybe they're going through something tough. There could be a myriad of reasons. How would you coach someone like that? How would you say, hey, it's supposed to be the happiest time of the year. It's time to celebrate, and you're feeling so low, you're feeling alone. What would be some ways that you would help somebody to facilitate them through that?
Yeah. So for me, a big process has been reparenting myself and giving myself that love. And that, we said before, I choose myself first, right? So instead of expecting someone, so I'm single, I'm also in my 40s, and I'm like, I can't expect a guy to come and give me the love and affection that I desire. I have to give myself first. And again, it can sound really woo-woo, and some
Not at
people's like,
all. No.
yes, but it's learning. So again, it's a learning process. It's not one day that you wake up and you learn how to give that love and reparenting yourself, but it's ongoing. So I hug myself sometimes. I say, like, you're doing amazing, like pat on the shoulder. Again, I'm not expecting someone to do that for me. And when we were speaking just a few minutes ago, what it was coming up to me is asking for help, right? I think sometimes, a lot of the time, we avoid that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to feel rejected or, oh, no one's going to help me, but being able to ask for help. So I work with mentors and coaches. I create relationships that I'm proud of. So for these people in this moment, is there anyone that you want to reach out to? Is there anyone that you can call? Is there anyone that feels in alignment for you right now to have a conversation and to share? I'm going through a really tough time right now.
Yeah.
So these would be some of the things for me.
I love that. And that's not always easy to do, because the tendency is to isolate even further, because when you feel so alone, you think you're the only one going through it, and you're just so really self-absorbed. And sometimes you need to be self-absorbed to get out on the other side of that. And But yeah, I also, when we were talking before about vulnerability, sort of being that point of power, I think a lot of people awaken up to that, especially because of the work of Brene Brown. She's done a lot of consciousness, alerting the consciousness to how important it is for us to be vulnerable. So how have you seen that being a catalyst for confidence?
Yeah. So as we were talking just before about when you feel low, you isolate even more. So it's almost that loop of you getting deeper and deeper into, I feel alone. No one understands me. I'm rejected. I'm all alone. So you can really sink down that path, because I know for myself, even being confident, even having a lot of friends and mentors and everything, when I'm going through a tough time, the first thing I want to do is retract and go under the covers and hide.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about vulnerability, is having the courage in those moments to be vulnerable. Like I said, even calling someone and saying, I'm going through a really hard time. You can call a lifeline, you can call a friend, a previous teacher, a
Mm-hmm.
family member, in this moment, it could be really anyone. And having the courage to be vulnerable, that's when you're going to create the connection. That's when true connection happens. When you're able to share that not everything is great. Even if it seems like I have the job and I have the money and I have the house, and sometimes I even have a partner and family, but deep down I'm struggling. It's so important that we're able to have this conversation right now. And like I said, I'm so grateful for Brené Brown and other people that are bringing this topic to surface. And I think I'm a huge advocate for that as well,
Mm-hmm.
because that's when we create true connection. And this is who we are as human beings.
Yes, and it's brave. It's brave to be vulnerable. I'm in the middle of writing pieces of a memoir and vignettes and things about my life in my research, putting this book together. And it's like, oh, I find myself going into that fear of judgment that we were talking about before. And it diminishes my confidence to even get the creativity to flow because I'm editing myself as I'm trying to write. So when we're talking about being embodied and having embodiment as a practice, when I'm writing, if I was just journaling, no worries. Like, hey, it's just going to come out on the paper, right? I might even burn it afterward. But when I know it's going out into the world, there's an attachment to it that I don't want to give away too much, because then what? We're back to that primal fear.
What's your practice in that moment to move through?
Yeah, this is what I'm learning. So somebody had said, write the book that you wish you could have read when you were going through your hardest times. For the perspective I have now and the wisdom I've gained from that time till now, like, write that book that you wish you could have read. And when I think of it like that, it's great. Also, I know I have to go through a whole practice before I actually sit down to write, to stay in my body, to release expectations, to let this flow, to let my soul be in the driver's seat, to open my heart, expand my mind, all those things. Whereas before I would have just sat down and started plunking away. Oh, why isn't this flowing? Whatever. And I realized I have to get into a certain state. I have to literally be in a whole different frequency to write what I need to write, just because it is literally like a spiritual practice.
So beautiful and so powerful. And what was coming for me when you're sharing that is, go back to the books and movies and songs that make you feel something and that you really love and appreciate. And they were so vulnerable, right? So I was reading Will Smith's book and he shares about his childhood, who was so hard. And I never knew anything about that. I knew he's a great actor. He makes a lot of money. He's successful, has a beautiful wife, kids. So when I read that, I feel so connected to him as a human, because he's being so vulnerable and talking about really, tough things. And if you go back to most books and again, songs and movies, that's when we feel that beautiful connection with people.
Good. That's good. I'll have to think of like my top 3 to 5, because I've read some really powerful memoirs and I was like, I can't believe how brutally honest in a powerful way that this person was able, and it's so inspiring. So with this connection piece, where we sort of, to get that authentic confidence to do our brave work in the world, you mentioned there's some tools you use about like curiosity and fun. Can you kind of walk us through how you get brave to be the vulnerable self, to be authentic?
So when we talk about mindset, will be those thoughts about what if I tried this. Let's find out. I really have that perspective of, let's find out. How can I have fun? How can I show up as myself and test the waters right? And being fun. And I think there are other tools like what we're talking about before, even the way you dress. How are you going to feel in power? What's is it that you're going to wear that's going to make you feel good when you walk into a room to meet other people? How are you standing, your posture? So I think there are different areas. There's the mind, having that curious mind, that curiosity, that openness. And there are practical things about even the way that you dress, the way that you stand, the way that you
They all
speak.
make a difference.
Yeah. Are you speaking outwards and loudly and being able to be heard and seen? So yeah, I talk a lot. I coach women, and I talk a lot about being seen, heard, and loved for who you are. And I think we are in this massive journey.
Yes. And because the feminine energy is rising on the planet, both in men and women, that's kind of why I'm changing the name of my podcast. And I told you the name, and I might have to kill you if you tell anyone. But next week will be the where I reveal the new name of the podcast, which is very much in line with what we're talking about. Is like, are you going to show up as you? And let's build that courage. Let's foster that. That's what coaches are doing. That's why people pay coaches, because they need a buffer. They need somebody to guide them through this process. Oftentimes, I know I did. It's a whole new terrain when you're letting your old self sort of sit over here while you step into a new skin, like the butterfly out of the chrysalis. It opens up so much more, and it also makes you even more vulnerable than you were before. And having a community or a tribe or people around you that affirm that, who they're on the other side of it, and they're like, it's going to be fine. Just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you're doing with your podcast as well. You're inviting people to be part of this conversation and have these new thoughts and new ideas and new embodiment, right? So yeah, kudos to you for doing that. And like you said, a coach can be powerful in the way that they can hold your hand throughout the process. I share with my clients all my own mistakes so they don't have to go and do the same things. I'm like, here's the roadmap, it's so much easier. And with a coach, sometimes you have access to the tribe as well, like you said, and it's so powerful to have people cheering for you, people sharing, again, vulnerably, that they all struggling with very similar things. So creating that beautiful community and connection can be so powerful in these moments.
Yeah, it's like we need it now. It's not just a nice bonus. Like for the people who are really stepping in to be like a light worker or a way shower, or a leader or guide or whatever, we need the tribal support. It's like crucial to the process. And that comes back and circles back to the loneliness part. When you, like you were saying, when you feel lonely, reach out. If you feel bereft of something or something's missing, what do they call it? 5 seconds of courage or 7 seconds of courage or something. Just reach out and find a community or a tribe or some person that you can connect with and be vulnerable with them and share. That will take years sometimes off of the healing process for you, just to be able to have that radical like self accountability, and because the tendency is to just kind of keep wallowing in those lower frequency emotions, like no one understands me, nothing works out for me, I'm totally alone, nobody likes me, whatever, we start whining. It's the opening of the heart and letting people in that really does the work. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I love that. And I think for me, when I don't want to talk about something or share something, I know that's where I need to go, because again, it's the vulnerable piece and is what's going to shift things for me. And yes, it's that, even the 5-second rule, just take action, do something. And I think when we are talking about community with the internet now, seriously, there's so many opportunities. There's a website here in Australia called Meetup. I don't know if you guys have it in the US or around the world, but you can look for communities of whatever it is, photographers, women in leadership, women in power, spirituality. So you literally start connecting with those people. There are Facebook groups. There is so much. And you don't want to just keep it on the online space. You want to find actual people in your city, in your suburb, that you can go and connect and have a coffee and have that.
Boy, did COVID not teach us that, right? Like, we had to quarantine and isolate and put masks over our faces. And And I know in Australia it was really bad because I have friends that live there and it was a long process. You guys had an elongated COVID quarantine process, but now we're coming on the other side of that. And it's like, no, people are really craving that human connection in person. So I love that you're advocating for like the in-person communities, even if it's like 2 other people, right? It's still a community.
Love face to face. I love hugs. I love shaking hands. I love people looking at people in the eyes and feeling their presence. I think to talk about spirituality and energy and frequency on your podcast. And when you sit with people, you can feel their energy straight away.
Absolutely. Well, I love your energy, and I love the openness sometimes a lot of Latin women have with their bodies. It just seems like there's just this embodiment factor. And I love connecting multiculturally to this and how it manifests in different cultures. I think there's a lot more inhibition. And you wouldn't think so, like in the American culture, like you wouldn't think so probably by seeing all the Hollywood movies and whatever. But just the purity culture and some of the toxic perfectionism, it really holds a lot of people back. Just that whole, having to look a certain way or be a certain way. I know it's not just American, I know it's all over, but it feels like what we're coming into is this new era of, you be you, I'll be me.
Yeah.
And that's
I got
exciting. I do too. So yeah. So anyway, how can people find you online, Lahaina? Tell us what you're offering, where people can connect to you.
Absolutely. I have a website, lahainadaudt.com, and I'm on social media, Facebook and Instagram. I love creating content and sharing these little nuggets of wisdom and knowledge. I've been doing personal development and spiritual development for quite a few years now. So I love sharing what I've learned, what I've implemented. I love leading by example. So yeah, if you guys want to find me on social media and follow and say hi, I love chatting to people. I love connecting to people. So yeah, I feel really blessed to be able to do this for a living.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
It was a pleasure. I loved it.